Lila Hart wasn't supposed to stand out, at least not tonight. She kept reminding herself of that as she smoothed the soft lavender fabric of the borrowed dress, the one her cousin insisted looked expensive enough to blend in with billionaires. Lila didn't belong in ballrooms with crystal chandeliers or marble floors that glowed like polished ice. She was here for one simple reason: to be someone's date. A fill-in, a last-minute stand-in for a man she barely knew. Her date, Nolan Reeves, wasn't even late. He simply hadn't shown up yet. He'd hired her through a discreet arrangement. Accompany him to a charity gala, smile politely, and keep conversations light. She wasn't an escort. She wasn't pretending to be a girlfriend. She was just a warm body beside a wealthy man who didn't want to appear alone in front of investors and competitors. Still, she hated how self-conscious she felt as she stepped deeper into the ballroom. Everyone looked like they'd been born, knowing how to glide across marble, how to tilt their chin at the exact proper angle, how to smile like secrets were currency. Lila held herself together with quiet composure, her heartbeat betraying her calm exterior. Then, as she adjusted the thin silver strap of her dress, she felt something change in the air. A subtle shift, like the soft hush that ripples through a crowd when someone powerful enters the room. She didn't need to turn to know the billionaire had arrived. Elias Thorne. The name alone carried weight whispers of the youngest self-made billionaire in the state, a man known for acquiring companies the way others collected souvenirs. He wasn't expected to be here tonight. Rumors said he avoided social events unless he absolutely had to. And yet, as Lila slowly looked over her shoulder, there he was, tall, controlled, effortlessly composed. His suit was midnight black, tailored to perfection, the kind of fit that didn't require attention because it naturally demanded it. Elias had the sort of presence that pulled focus without trying broad shoulders, hands in pockets, a subtle confidence in the way his gaze swept the room. And then his eyes landed on her. She froze, not because he was famous, not because he was breathtaking, but because his gaze didn't skim past her the way everyone else's had. He stopped, saw her, really saw her. A flicker of confusion, or was it curiosity, touched his face. Lila immediately looked away, embarrassed at the idea of a billionaire noticing a woman who didn't belong. She took a slow breath, grounding herself. This wasn't about Elias Thorne or the way his presence reshaped the room. She just needed Nolan to show up so she could do her job, go home, and pretend she hadn't spent the evening pretending to be the kind of woman who fit in here. But when her phone buzzed, her stomach tightened. A message from Nolan. Emergency meeting. Can't make it. Stay for an hour. Mingle. I'll pay. Extra. Lila closed her eyes. Of course. She typed a reply. I can't stay alone here, but hesitated before hitting send. Would he even care? Doubtful. He needed a placeholder, and she was replaceable. She slid her phone back into her small clutch. That's when a deep, calm voice spoke behind her. You seem lost. Her spine straightened. Slowly she turned. Elias Thorne was standing directly behind her, close enough to touch, close enough that she felt the quiet strength of his presence settle around her like warmth. He wasn't smiling. Elias rarely smiled in photographs, but in person, the seriousness felt sharper, like he was filtering everything through calculation. I am fine, she said, forcing her voice not to crack. Just waiting for someone. His gaze lowered to her clutch, where the faint glow of her screen still pulsed through the thin fabric. "Someone important?" he asked, though his tone didn't suggest idle curiosity. More like he already knew the answer and wanted to hear how she phrased it. "Not exactly," she admitted, "but I have a role here to fill." Elias tilted his head, studying her. "You don't look like anyone's accessory." She laughed softly under her breath. "This dress is borrowed. The confidence is borrowed. The only thing that's real is the discomfort." Something surprising flickered in his expression. Amusement. Interest. Like she had said something most people wouldn't dare say to him. "And yet you're still here," he observed. "I gave my word," she replied simply. Elias breathed out slowly, then glanced around the room as if confirming what she had already sensed. People were watching him, always watching him. He returned his gaze to her. "Come with me," he murmured, offering his arm not in arrogance, but with a quiet certainty that felt strangely grounding. Lila blinked. "What? Why?" "Because you're alone," he said, "and I don't like leaving good people stranded in rooms full of sharks." Her heart skipped. Good people. No one had called her that in a long time. "I don't even know you," she said softly. "No," he agreed, "but I'd like to change that." Before she could answer, a sharp voice cut through the crowd. "Mr. Thorne, we thought you weren't attending tonight." Elias's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He leaned in slightly close enough that his breath brushed her ear. "If you stay standing alone, you'll be surrounded in seconds," he whispered. "Let me spare you that." Goosebumps raced along her arms. She knew she should say no, knew she should stay neutral, keep her distance. Remember, this was supposed to be a simple job with no entanglements. But something about the way he looked at her, steady, deliberate, almost protective, made a part of her soften. She placed her hand lightly on his offered arm. His expression didn't change much, but his eyes did. Something warm flickered there. As they walked through the crowd together, whispers trailed behind them. "Who is she? Elias brought a date? She must be important." Lila felt her cheeks heat, but Elias leaned in just slightly, just enough for only her to hear. "Don't worry," he murmured. "They'll get over it." She met his eyes. "Why are you doing this?" His answer was low, controlled, almost intimate. "Because you were just his date," he said, pausing as his gaze drifted to her lips before meeting her eyes again. "But the moment I saw you, I wanted more." Her breath caught, and for the first time tonight, Lila felt like she wasn't pretending anything. Lila wasn't sure what surprised her more, the billionaire's quiet intensity or the way people parted for them, as if the marble floor itself had commanded them to move. Elias held himself with a composure that felt both untouchable and strangely human, like he understood exactly how much power he carried and tried not to crush anything fragile in his path. He guided her toward a quieter corner of the ballroom, away from the curious glances and raised eyebrows. Only when they reached a small cluster of tall windows overlooking the city did he finally release a soft breath. "I don't usually do this," he said. She frowned slightly. "Talk to strangers?" "Rescue them," he corrected, the corner of his mouth lifting the slightest bit. "Especially when everyone in this room would kill for the opposite." Lila let out a nervous laugh. "You make it sound like I'm in danger." He studied her with that steady, unwavering focus that made her feel seen in ways she hadn't expected. "You are, just not the kind you think." Her lips parted. "What does that mean?" It means, Elias said, lowering his voice as if sharing something rare, that someone like you doesn't belong in this performance. These people aren't here for charity. They're here to measure each other, to show wealth, not kindness. You walk in with sincerity, and they'll devour it. She blinked, unsure how to respond to such startling honesty from a man known for emotional distance. You don't even know me. I noticed you before you noticed me, he said. You weren't posing. You weren't trying to be admired. You weren't performing. Do you know how rare that is in my world? Lila looked away, suddenly aware of how vulnerable she felt under his gaze. I was actually trying not to be noticed. That's the funny part, he murmured, because you were. Her breath caught again. A server passed by, offering champagne. Lila reached for a glass, but Elias gently placed his fingers over hers, stopping her. Careful, he said. She raised an eyebrow. Is it poisoned? No, he said, leaning in. But if you keep looking this flustered, people will assume we're on a date, and I'm trying to be respectful. Her heart hammered. And we're not on a date. His expression shifted subtly, something warm, unguarded, almost vulnerable. Not yet. Lila's pulse stuttered. Elias, before she could finish, the lights dimmed slightly as the host began announcing the evening program. Voices quieted across the room, but Elias didn't look away from her, as if the entire gala had faded into background noise. You can leave, he said softly. If you want to. I know this isn't your world. And if I don't want to leave, she whispered before she could stop herself. He drew a slow breath, the muscles in his jaw tightening just barely, as if he wasn't sure how much truth to allow into the moment. Then, he said, stepping a fraction closer, I'll ask you something I never ask anyone at these events. Her voice was barely a breath. Ask me what? His eyes dipped to her lips for a single, telling second. To stay with me tonight, not as a date, not as a performance. His voice softened. But as the one person here I actually want to know. Heat pooled in her chest. Lila, he added, her name spoken, like a secret he'd waited hours to say. I want more than just a moment with you. She swallowed hard. Why me? Elias didn't hesitate. Because for the first time in years, I'm looking at someone who makes me feel human. Her breath trembled. And in that quiet corner, with the city skyline behind them and the ballroom fading into a blur, Lila knew something undeniable. She hadn't come tonight to be someone's borrowed date. Fate had brought her here for something far more dangerous. Something she wasn't sure she was ready for, but something she suddenly wanted deeply, fiercely.